In a world drowning in visibility, the most powerful people remain unseen. While the masses scramble for attention, validation, and exposure, the truly powerful move in silence. They are not absent because they are weak. They are absent because they are calculating. Because every time they appear, it matters. In a culture obsessed with presence, they become rare. And rarity is power. The man who is constantly seen becomes familiar. The familiar becomes common. And the common is never feared. Understand this. Power thrives in distance. Familiarity breeds comfort. Comfort breeds disrespect. When people see too much of you, they stop listening. When you're always available, you become expected. And what is expected is never respected. Machiavelli knew this long before the age of social media. He understood that the ruler must maintain mystery, must withhold more than he reveals, because the moment you become ordinary in the eyes of others, they begin to treat you as such. Look at the modern man. He documents everything, every thought, every move, every emotion broadcast to the world. He thinks this transparency will bring connection, but it only brings dilution. The more he shares, the less he holds. The more he reveals, the less they respect. And so he becomes loud and ignored, present and irrelevant. Meanwhile, the man who appears rarely, but with weight, becomes unforgettable. This is the paradox of presence. Those who shout the loudest are heard the least. Those who speak rarely are listened to the most. Because their absence builds tension, their silence builds curiosity. When they enter a room, people feel it. When they speak, people stop moving. That presence, earned through scarcity, is what makes them powerful. It's not just what they say, it's that they chose to say it at all. You must learn to vanish with intent. Do not show up everywhere. Do not speak just to fill silence. Every appearance must carry force. Every word must land. The man who is always talking has nothing left when it matters. The man who speaks strategically never runs out of impact. You do not need to be seen constantly. You need to be remembered. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But understand, fear is not always created through action. Often it is created through absence, through mystery, through the unknown. People fear what they cannot predict, and nothing is harder to predict than the man who chooses when and if he appears. So begin to disappear. From conversations that don't serve you, from rooms where your value is not recognized, from performances designed to entertain those who wouldn't bleed for you. Leave the stage. Let the noise eat itself. While others compete to be seen, you rise by being felt. Felt through impact, not volume. Through silence, not noise. Through rarity, not repetition. Become rare, and you will become unforgettable. Rarity is a weapon. In a culture of overexposure, it is the man who withholds that commands attention. Everyone else floods the room. They speak too much, post too often, explain endlessly. Their presence is constant, and because of that, it's disposable. The powerful man is different. He doesn't flood. He drips, slowly, deliberately. He lets absence speak for him. And when he finally appears, the contrast alone makes people stop. That's not coincidence. That's strategy. Understand this. When you're always accessible, people subconsciously lower your value. They know they can reach you anytime, so they delay. They take liberties. They talk over you. But when you become rare, when your voice, your time, your attention must be earned, they change. They come correct. They speak less. They listen more. Why? Because now you've flipped the dynamic. You've become the one in control. Machiavelli warned that rulers must not be too familiar with the people, not because they should be cold, but because closeness erodes respect. The more they see you laugh, explain, compromise, the more they forget you're the authority. The more you are seen, the more they think they know you. And once they think they know you, they no longer fear you. You become something they can predict, something they can control. This is why the powerful cultivate mysticete. They don't react to every comment. They don't respond to every challenge. They don't show up to prove themselves. They already know who they are. And that knowing makes others uncomfortable, because when someone doesn't need the spotlight, it's often because they already own the stage. You must learn this art. Disappear not because you're weak, but because you're building tension. Not because you're hiding, but because you're deciding. You don't rush into rooms. You enter when the moment holds weight. You don't speak to fill gaps. You speak when the silence needs a blade. The man who controls when he appears controls the meaning of his appearance. In every arena, business, relationships, leadership, it is the rare man who dominates, not by force, not by volume, but by understanding that value is built in the shadows, then revealed briefly in light. The king does not walk through the marketplace every day. He is seen at decisive moments. He does not beg to be heard. His silence commands inquiry. His absence builds anticipation. His presence, when it finally comes, ends debate. When you make yourself rare, people must choose how they spend the little of you they get. They treat your time as treasure. They weigh their words before they waste yours. But this is only possible when you first made peace with being unseen. The weak chase visibility. The strong create it. You are not here to be everywhere. You are here to be unforgettable when it matters. So practice disappearing. In conversations, speak less. In arguments, hold silence. In life, move like a shadow. Make your moments intentional. Make your presence felt not by volume, but by gravity. That's the difference between being noticed and being remembered. Powerful people do not appear less because they are afraid. They appear less because they are focused. Every public moment is a withdrawal from a private bank of discipline, strategy, and preparation. While the common man spends his energy broadcasting his life, the powerful man conserves it, refining his weapons in silence. He knows that showing up everywhere dilutes impact. So he vanishes, not in retreat, but in concentration. He becomes scarce to sharpen his edge. Think of the generals who do not reveal troop movements, the CEOs who do not announce every plan, the rulers who do not justify every decision. They are not hiding, they are governing. Their distance is a wall. Behind it, they make moves that need no explanation. The weak man wants to be seen so he can feel significant. The strong man becomes significant, then decides when to be seen. It's not ego, it's strategy. This is why those who are always performing lose control. They give the world too much access, too many explanations, too many opinions. They try to stay relevant through constant exposure, not realizing that relevance bought this way comes cheap and ends quickly. Machiavelli knew that power was preserved by discretion. A prince should be slow to believe and slow to act, he wrote. And when he finally does act, it should be with force, not noise. Force. You must adopt this mindset. Visibility is not the goal, impact is. And impact requires contrast. It requires you to vanish often enough that your return creates tension. Presence only matters when absence has been felt. The man who is always speaking loses the power of silence. The man who is always present loses the power of entrance. The man who is always available becomes a background character in his own life. To become rare, you must become disciplined. Cut off the need to respond to everything. Cut off the habit of explaining yourself. Stop seeking to be understood. Power doesn't move through consensus, it moves through conviction. You must decide what you stand for and then refuse to dilute that stance through endless appearances. You are not here to be consumed, you are here to be remembered. This is not about arrogance. This is about precision. Your time is limited. Your energy is not infinite. And your value increases when you treat it as such. Powerful people guard their presence because they understand what it's worth. They do not hand it out cheaply. They do not chase attention. They make others rise to earn it. The world cannot ignore the man who shows up like thunder, briefly, but unmistakably. So train yourself to retreat. Build in private. Observe in silence. Speak only when it cuts. Move only when it shifts something. Be present, not out of habit, but out of purpose. Become the kind of man whose absence is noticed more than most people's presence. That's how you win, not by being loud, but by being rare. Rarity creates power because it forces the world to pay attention. When you're always present, people stop looking. When you're always speaking, they stop listening. But when you appear with purpose, when you move with restraint, your every step feels like a statement. You no longer blend into the crowd. You rise above it. Not by volume, but by scarcity. That's how legends are made. Not by constant noise, but by calculated presence. The weak man floods the room with his personality, hoping something sticks. The strong man enters slowly, speaks once, and leaves an echo. One is forgettable, the other is unforgettable. The weak man thrives on response. He needs feedback, applause, validation. He is addicted to being noticed. The strong man doesn't need the noticed. He's content with silence because he knows the silence works for him. In that silence, others wonder, others project, others wait. That waiting becomes pressure, and pressure builds power. You must make your presence so precise, so intentional, that when you enter, the room recalibrates. Conversations pause, attention shifts. Why? Because you've trained the world to expect meaning in your movements. You've disciplined yourself to avoid meaningless noise. That is how you train others to listen when it matters. Your absence has taught them that your presence is a signal, not decoration. Machiavelli would call this the architecture of authority, not built in chaos, but in design. The ruler does not walk through every corridor, and yet his shadow is felt everywhere. You must be the same, not constantly explaining, not endlessly justifying, but present where it matters and silent where it doesn't. Appear in moments that require power. Ask yourself that you really care the description about power. Disappear when the crowd wants performance. This is how powerful people become myths. The less you are seen, the more they imagine. And what they imagine will often be larger than what you could have shown them. That's the beauty of strategic absence. It doesn't just preserve your strength, it amplifies it. Because people do not fear what they understand. They fear what they cannot fully grasp. The man who is always speaking gives away his mind. The man who speaks selectively makes his mind untouchable. But make no mistake, rarity must be earned. You cannot simply vanish and expect to be remembered. You must build something in your silence, develop skill, insight, clarity. Your reappearance must come with weight. You must disappear to sharpen the blade, so that when you return, the cut is clean. The weak man disappears and returns transformed. That transformation is what demands respect. So stop explaining your silence. Let them wonder where you've been. Let them ask why you didn't speak. Let them feel the gap you left behind. Your absence is the stage. Your return is the performance. But only if you've built something worthy in the shadows. Do not waste your invisibility on comfort. Use it to grow, to study, to plan, to rise. The world will not forget the man who made himself rare for a reason. Be rare, be calculated, and when you do speak singularly, shake the ground. The man who becomes rare transforms how the world reacts to him. No longer do they expect him to perform, to please, to explain. Instead, they adjust. They tread carefully. They measure their words before speaking. They come to him with more respect, not because he demanded it, but because he withdrew everything they once took for granted. This is the hidden law of power. Scarcity breeds significance, and the man who learns to control his presence controls the room, even in his absence. Weakness wants to be seen. It needs to be acknowledged. But strength is indifferent. The powerful do not need constant exposure because their identity is not tied to being noticed. It is tied to being remembered. The rare man doesn't chase relevance. He defines it. He doesn't flood the feed, he interrupts it. One word from him carries more weight than 1,000 from the man who never stops talking. To get here, you must kill the impulse to be everywhere, the need to respond to everything, the temptation to constantly justify yourself, The men who are played the most are those who feel obligated to stay visible. They believe disappearing means losing relevance. But Machiavelli would say the opposite, that power is secured by those who understand timing, discretion, and mystique. The prince who reveals himself too much invites weakness. The prince who controls his visibility protects his crown. This is how you must operate. Appear when it changes things, speak when it bends the room, act when it cannot be ignored. Everything else, retreat. Let others waste themselves in the spotlight. Let them burn out chasing attention. You will rise in the shadows. You will grow while they deplete. And when they are exhausted from being seen, you will emerge undeniable. There is a kind of fear that comes from uncertainty, not knowing when a man will speak, not knowing when he'll strike, not knowing what he's building while the world sleeps. This fear is the most powerful currency you will ever hold, and it is earned not through aggression, but through discipline, through vanishing when noise demands you show up, through refusing to explain when the crowd demands answer, through choosing silence not because you have nothing to say, but because what you say must matter. People will criticize you for this. They'll call you distant, detached, difficult. Let them. Their discomfort is proof of your strength. The man who is always available is easy to use. The man who is hard to reach forces others to rise to his level. When you no longer bend for access, others must stretch to reach you. And you will notice, only the worthy will try. The manipulators, the needy, the weak, they will fall away because you've made yourself too expensive to exploit. That is the quiet elegance of becoming rare. It is not isolation, it is filtration. You are not cutting people off. You are cutting access to those who haven't earned it. The more you do this, the higher your value rises. This is not theory, this is war. And in this war, noise is weakness, silence is control, distance is armor, presence is a weapon. Use them all like a strategist, not to be seen more, but to be needed less. Not to be liked more, but to be respected without question. When you fully embrace rarity, you no longer move like the rest. You don't announce your plans, you don't explain your decisions, you don't show up because it's expected. You show up when it matters. And because of this, your presence begins to carry weight that others can't replicate. While they chase attention, you own attention. While they broadcast constantly, you interrupt strategically. This is what separates the powerful from the desperate, the rare from the forgotten. People begin to notice your silence. They begin to notice your absence. And in that absence, they fill in the blanks. They wonder where you are, what you're thinking, what you're planning. You become a subject of speculation. You become myth. And myths are always more powerful than the men who overshare. This is the beauty of restraint. It doesn't just preserve your mystery, it multiplies it. The less they know, the more they imagine. The more they imagine, the more power you hold. Machiavelli understood this at his core. He knew that when a leader is predictable, he becomes weak. When he is accessible, he becomes common. But when he is calculated, when he appears rarely, when he acts with intent, his authority grows beyond measure. That is not distance for ego's sake. It is distance as a weapon, a strategic retreat from the world, so that, when you return, your impact is absolute. The weak show up daily to prove they exist. The strong vanish and return when it matters, and the world adjusts. Your goal is not to be constantly remembered. Your goal is to make your presence impossible to ignore when it appears. Think about that. People forget what's always in front of them, but they never forget the moment something rare entered their space and shifted the entire dynamic. That's what your presence must become, a shift. This is how powerful people move. They speak with fewer words. They show up with fewer steps, but each word cuts, each step echoes. They are minimal but undeniable. Their absence is not void, it's pressure. Their silence is not emptiness, it's leverage. They do not compete in the crowded marketplace of constant visibility. They own the space no one else can enter. the space of deliberate, sharpened, earned presence. When you adopt this way of living, everything around you begins to realign. People speak to you differently. Opportunities present themselves more carefully. Even adversaries tread with more caution. You have reprogrammed how the world treats you, not by demanding it, but by conditioning it. You made your time expensive. You made your energy rare. You made your presence sacred. This is the final form of self-respect. It is not loud, it is not theatrical, it is quiet, selective, disciplined, and it's felt by everyone around you, even in your absence. That is power. So now, ask yourself, are you willing to stop showing up just to be seen? Are you ready to start appearing only when it shifts the room? Are you ready to become rare? If you are, prove it now. Type in the comments, I move in silence. I appear with purpose. Let's see who among you is done with being common and who's ready to rise above it. And don't stop here. If this message spoke to the part of you that's ready for real power, the next video is waiting. Go there now. Watch it carefully. Your transformation is just getting started.